The role of the editor in re-editing fairy tales. In my video essay, I will look at the role of the editor in relation to fairy tales, in hopes to understand what it is, why it is important, and what has changed. The provisional title for my thesis is Telling Tales: The Journey from the Traditional to the Digital. In my thesis, I plan to look at and analyse fairy tales and their many adaptations through Proprian analysis. But to do that, first I need to get to the very core of these fairy tales. I need to understand how and why these fairy tales have been able to be adapted and or rather re-edited into different forms. As Stephen King wrote, "To write is human, to edit divine." Before I delve into the idea of re-editing fairy tales, I will first look at the traditional, more generic idea of what editing is. So let's take the Collins English Dictionary for example. They have edit, to prepare text for publication by checking and improving its accuracy or clarity. To be in charge of a newspaper or magazine, to prepare a film, tape, etc. by rearranging or selecting material, and edit out, which is to remove a section from a text or film. I suppose for most people, when you think of editing, you think of the likes of a newspaper editor, magazine editor, those that deal with textual content, proofreaders, for example. You think of the person that looks for the mistakes, such as syntax, spelling, punctuation, grammar. But we have to think of the different types of editors that are there now. We have photo editors, film editors, and editors now for digital and online content. What is an editor? An editor is someone who edits content to make it more readable or viewable to a given audience. An editor has to be aware of their audience. They give structure and style to a piece of work. They help to shape and voice the content for the reader or viewer. A film editor, for example, has to ensure that the story is being told in an understandable way through the script and the visuals. At its most fundamental, film editing is the art, technique, and practice of assembling shots into a coherent sequence. Good film editing allows the viewer to become so engaged that they are not aware of the editing. A quote that I really like that sums up editing at its core for all the different types of editors that there are says that an editor polishes and refines. He directs the focus of the story or article or movie along a particular course. He or she cuts out what doesn't fit, what is non-essential to the purpose of the story. She enhances the major points, drawing attention to the places where the audience should focus. Re-editing. So what is re-editing? According to the Oxford English Dictionary, to re-edit is to edit again. Simple as. For my thesis, I want to look at the different adaptations of given fairy tales and show that they are simply re-edits of a given story. This can be seen within every genre of film or movie. When you really think about it, most stories, be them in books or on the big screen, are the same principles, just edited by different people, i.e. re-edited. So over the next few minutes of my video, I will have a look at different types of re-editing. For example, feminist rewrites of fairy tales and stories in film, and some stories such as Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. So this next slide here is a slide I found online that shows that props theory can be used to analyze films as well as fairy tales themselves. It doesn't have to be something that's literary. So from this diagram here, or well, pictures here, you can see that the hero, which is Aragorn, is a character that seeks something, and the villain, Sauron, who's someone who opposes or actively blocks the hero's quest. The donor, Bilbo Baggins, provides an object with magical properties, and the dispatcher, Gandalf, sends the hero on his or her quest with a message. And the false hero, who's Gollum in Lord of the Rings, disrupts the hero's success by making false claims. The helper, Legolas, aids the hero, and the princess, Arwen, acts as the reward for the hero and the object of the villain's plots. And her father, Elrond, acts to reward the hero for his effort. So if we take on my idea of re-editing and we look at Harry Potter as a re-edited version of Lord of the Rings through props theory, we would have the hero, Harry, then the villain would be Voldemort. The donor would be Harry's father when he gives him because he gives him the invisibility cloak, which would be the object with magical properties. The dispatcher would be Dumbledore. The false hero in the Philosopher's Stone could be seen as Professor Quirrell. The helper or helpers would be Ron and Hermione. And an interesting theory is that the princess in the later ones could be seen as Ginny, but if you're just looking at the Philosopher's Stone, could be seen as the Philosopher's Stone itself. And I suppose if you're taking that theory, the father of the princess is Dumbledore or Nicholas Flamel. So it's interesting to see that you're able to apply these theories by completely re-editing a story and changing it. The interesting thing with J.K. Rowling is that she also re-edits the whole idea of the hero, because as the books progress, we end up seeing another hero, like the unthinkable hero. You wouldn't think it, but Neville is a possible hero. So there is a second hero within the book and the books themselves. So for my thesis itself, I'm very interested in the rewritings and re-editing of fairy tales themselves. So in particular, from a feminist perspective, such as Little Red Riding Hood. And you can see Little Red Riding Hood being adapted by an actual feminist through Angela Carter's rewritings of the tale in her book, The Bloody Chamber. The one I'm going to focus on for now is the short story titled The Company of Wolves, which was later adapted to film by Neil Jordan. And as I did for my Wikipedia editing, I spoke about Angela Carter's retelling of it. So her collection, The Bloody Chamber, is a collection of dark feminist fables filled with bestial and ferocious heroines. As Catherine Ornstein puts it, in her revision of the classic, Carter examines female lust that is healthy but also challenging and disturbing at times, unbridled and feral, lust that delivers up contradictions. So I find it very interesting that Little Red Riding Hood has been re-edited to have a feminist perspective instead of the tale of a little girl that's supposed to be afraid of wolves in the forest. Writers like Angela Carter have recreated Little Riding Hood to actually be the wolf herself. Okay, so to conclude, the importance of the traditional editor and the idea of re-editing stories and folk tales to create new genres, new ideas, new meanings of old tales is extremely important to my thesis, because it pretty much is my thesis. The role of editors and re-editing is extremely important because it keeps stories and fairy tales alive through new means. Not only are we re-editing the tales themselves to have new stories, but we're also re-editing and reimagining the medium at which they are given to us. So not only have we got books and films, we're now progressing into the medium of video games. So yes, thank you very much.